Good morning and welcome to our Genesis Client Services webinar. My name is Amber Neely. I'm the Assistant Clinical Director here at Genesis. I'm also one of the women's and children's therapists. I'm joined by Jordan Bates. Jordan, do you want to say hi?
Hi, everybody.
And then also Charlotte Weatherford.
Good morning, everyone.
Who are also both women and children's therapists here at Genesis. So today, before we jump into our parenting topic, I just want to go through some housekeeping stuff and talk about confidentiality and safety. And so just a few reminders. This presentation is for educational purposes only. So please consider your own situation and your safety concerns prior to using any of the tools that we talk about today. Great. So whenever you're watching this webinar, just please be sure that you're watching in a safe place where only safe people can hear. Try maybe using headphones if that's an option for you. And then after you watch this, you can clear your browser history if you're concerned that somebody might be monitoring your phone or computer. If you're watching live on Zoom right now, you have to leave, please remember you'll have to click end a couple of times and then close the Zoom page to fully get out. And then again, if you're watching with us live on Zoom, please do not use the chat feature. If you do use the chat feature, your name and comment will be seen by anyone watching the live video and the video recording that we're going to be posting on our YouTube channel. And then if you leave any comments, you shouldn't be able to on YouTube, but if you do leave any comments on that YouTube channel, again, your name and comment will be seen by anyone who views our page. And then we do want to make sure that you have the support you need. We know that watching these webinars and this platform is a lot different as a result of COVID, right? And so we do want to make sure you know that if you are in crisis or if you need help with emergency safety planning or if you're needing shelter, you can call our 24-hour hotline at 214-946-4357. If you're not already a counseling client of ours and you would like to start counseling, you can call us at 214-389-7700. And then if you have any questions about anything that we talk about in today's webinar, we are going to leave our contact information at the end of this presentation. And so you'll be able to contact us directly. We are going to give you a lot of information and it's kind of generalized. And so we know that every situation is different and unique. So if you have anything that you need to ask us about or want any feedback you would like to give us, we'll leave our contact information at the end. We also want to share these hotlines. So again, you have our Genesis hotline. We also have the National Domestic Violence hotline. So if you're not in Dallas or you're in another state or if you're not in Dallas County and close by us, you can call the national hotline. Their number is 1-800-799-7233. They also have a website, thehotline.org, where they have a chat feature. We know that during times of crisis, whenever we experience trauma, that suicidal thoughts or thoughts of helplessness can come up as well. So we want to make sure that you have the number for the National Suicide Hotline. This is also a 24-hour hotline that you can reach if you're having any thoughts like this at 1-800-273-8255. Great, so we're going to jump into our topic today. I'm going to let Charlotte take over from here and get us started.
Hey, everyone. So we started last week a new series called ARC. We're going to be providing some parenting strategies and some information about attachment, regulation, and competency. Last week we introduced trauma, typical trauma responses that you might see in your child, and we kind of described the alarm system that we all have in our brain and how that alarm system responds to any kind of cues of danger or threat. So today we're just going to go into a little bit more detail about when your alarm system starts to become overreactive, what the fight-flight response looks like in children, and some strategies that you can do to help increase your child's attachment and emotional regulation. So last week we introduced the idea of this fire alarm. So it's going to be whenever it recognizes any kind of cue or threat of danger, your alarm system goes off. And there's all kinds of results from that and processes that happen after that. Typically, when the danger signal first goes off, your thinking part of your brain and the front top part of your brain is going to go off, the thinking part of your brain evaluates the immediate environment. If there's no danger, if it's a false alarm, then the alarm system is shut off and we continue with our activities. So an example of this is if you were walking up a busy street and you heard a car backfire. Within moments of that startle response, you might jump. Your brain's going to activate the sensory systems that scan your immediate environment and assess the cause of the noise. And once you realize that it was just a car backfire, your brain's going to be able to label that as non-threatening, and almost immediately you can continue on your way without really thinking much more about it. But for some people, the brain's danger signal goes off too often. This is generally when repeated danger has occurred in the past. Children who have experienced repeated or chronic trauma, they often have overreactive alarms, and they perceive danger more quickly than others, and they may label things that are non-threatening as potentially dangerous. Jordan has done a really good job in our previous webinars of describing some of these specific symptoms. So if you have more questions about that, we'll cover a little bit more, but you can also refer to our previous webinars. An example of an overreactive alarm would be same example as earlier. If you were walking down the street and you heard a car backfire, but let's imagine that this time you were somebody that maybe has been in combat, or if you've lived in an area that had frequent gunfire, your brain's going to respond to that noise differently than somebody that hasn't been in those situations. So as soon as that noise occurs, your body's immediately preparing for danger. Your thinking brain is less likely to get involved. That your thinking brain isn't going to be able to scan that environment and label this as non-threatening. It's preparing for survival. This is because in the past, waiting would have put you at risk for being shot. So you didn't have time to think about it in the past. And in order to keep you safe, the thinking brain is going to stay out of the way and just let the action brain take over. Your chances of survival are going to increase if you are immediately going into the action part of your brain instead of the thinking part of your brain. In times of actual danger, it's kept you alive, but when there aren't any threatening cues, if there's no danger around, then this is a system that is no longer helpful to you. We want to talk about what triggers the alarm. What are some triggers? So alarm signals in your brain that's what we refer to as triggers. False alarms can happen when we hear, see, feel something that reminds us of a dangerous or frightening things that have happened in the past, and even dangerous things that are continuing to happen in the moment. So this can be anything. This could be maybe somebody has assaulted you in the past and they smelled like cigarette smoke, so the smell of cigarette smoke could be a trigger. This could be even an emotion that we feel. This could be sounds, images. Our brain has learned to recognize these signals because at other times when they happen, dangerous things also happen and we had to respond quickly. So your brain just starts to associate those cues with danger. A trigger acts as a signal to your brain that you might be in danger right now and cues your brain to prepare for action. So different children have different triggers. It just depends on the kiddo and their background and what they've experienced. Excuse me, for a child who has witnessed domestic violence, a lot of times hearing people yell, watching adults argue might activate their alarm. For children who have not received enough attention, feeling alone or feeling scared might turn on their alarm. Trauma is often associated with kind of that chaotic, unpredictable, environment. And so as a result, sometimes even really subtle changes in a routine in a child's daily activities can activate their danger response. So some common triggers in children who have experienced trauma. So the unpredictability, the sudden change in routine, that can really evoke a strong response in them. Transition from one setting and activity to another, and that loss in control. I think a lot of times those two go together. And I often think of the classroom when I think of this. A child that maybe they were working on one activity and then they're having to stop that activity and move to something else. A lot of times that chaotic or that lack of control, the feeling that they get can be really triggering for them. Feelings of vulnerability or rejection, confrontation, authority or limit setting. This is, I think, oftentimes when maybe they're having some issues with authority at school. Teachers, coaches, things like that. Situations that they perceive as unfair or unjust, if they're feeling lonely. Sensory overload. So this is going to be too much stimulation from the environment. That might be if there's just a lot going on in the room. Maybe there's music playing and there's a lot of kiddos in the room and there's a lot of movement and noise and just sensory overload, too much for the brain to process at one time. Triggers may not always seem to make sense. For instance, some children may be triggered even by positive experiences. They may experience praise, intimacy, feelings of peace, and that might be uncomfortable for them, and that might be triggering for them. A child who's experienced previous losses, rejection, abandonment, they may feel frightened or mistrustful in positive relationships. A child who has perceived or received praise or bribery while being abused may fear ulterior motives. And a child who's experienced consistent chaos may find calmness or routines unsettling. So if this is something that they've never experienced, a positive relationship, the feeling of calm, that might be unsettling for them because it's something that they've never experienced before. So how do you know if your child's been triggered? What specifically, what specific behaviors would you might see in different danger responses? So we've talked a lot about the fight, flight, freeze, and submit responses. If your child's in a fight response, this might look like hyperactivity, can't sit in their seat, kind of that jumping off the walls behavior, maybe verbal aggression. You might see them being oppositional, defiant, testing limits. They know what the rules are and they may test those rules and see what they can get away with. Even physical aggression, those are going to be some signs that your kiddo's in a fight response. Flight, that may look like withdrawal. They just want to be alone, spending a lot of time in their room, trying to escape. That might be like, if for an older kiddo, they spend hours playing games or anything that they can try to escape into a different reality outside of their own little world. Running away, self-isolation, avoidance. Freeze may look like looking very still, observant, watchful, maybe even looking kind of dazed or like they're daydreaming, forgetful, shutting down emotionally. So that might just look like not talking, putting their head down, just looking like they're kind of closed off. And submit, that might look like giving in too easily, denying the child's own needs like hunger or toileting, aligning with more powerful peers, even when those peers are mean to the child. So any kind of behavior that's looking like they're just submitting to what they feel like they don't have any control over, that's going to be an indication that your kiddo is demonstrating the submit response. So a little bit further, emotionally, your children may appear afraid. They may look scared, shut down, angry. A lot of times you'll see some of these symptoms in their body. They may look like they're trembling. They may look like they're shaking. They may curl up. Look for moments when the intensity of the child's response does not match the intensity of the stressor, or when a child's behavior seems inexplicable or confusing. So y'all know your kiddos better than anybody else. If you start to notice behavior like this is just not like them, they're reacting, this is a way overreaction to what's actually happening here, you might start to consider, is my child's alarm going off? Is this a false alarm? Is my child triggered right now?
Thank you, Charlotte. Great. So we're gonna move into talking about learning your child's language. And so remember at Genesis, we're specifically working with women and children who've been impacted by domestic violence in their home. And so oftentimes when children experience this type of trauma, it's leading to these behaviors that are really difficult to understand, just like what Charlotte's been talking about, right? Their alarm system in their brain is overreactive. They're triggered really easily, and so it can be really hard to manage. And so sometimes what the child is saying is not really what they're trying to say, right? So trauma triggers can flood the child with a lot of different overwhelming emotions and body sensations that they just don't know what to do with, which means that they might just react, right? They might just act out, or maybe they throw something, or maybe they're crying, or maybe they're withdrawn, right? If they don't have proper coping strategies, they're unable to kind of navigate what's going on in their body. And they also have a difficult time identifying what's upsetting them, right? Domestic violence is a big problem for such a little human to have to deal with, right? They're not equipped with that. Even as adults, we're not necessarily equipped to deal with everything that comes with living in that type of environment. So children in these homes are experiencing other types of trauma. I know we talked about other traumas kids might experience at school, like bullying or racism, or living in poverty, right? So when we have all of these different things going on, kiddos have a really difficult time identifying exactly what is bothering them. They just know something is wrong. Their stomach hurts and they feel like something's upsetting them, but they don't know how to verbalize what that is. And for some kids, especially our kids growing up, in homes where there's domestic violence, right? Reaching out for help might be dangerous. They might be told that crying is bad, or you're a baby if you cry, or they might get yelled at if they ask for help. And so remember, they might become really withdrawn because the last time that they asked for help, they got in trouble. And that could just be maybe happening a few times, and that leaves a big imprint on them. So remember, things to think about with kiddos when what they're trying to say, right? Children primarily communicate through behavior and play. Littles do, right? They don't have the vocabulary yet to articulate exactly what's going on. So a lot of things are going to be looking at their behaviors, and that's going to help you understand what they're trying to say. Again, young children don't have the ability to use words to share feelings or experiences. This is learned over time. And this is your job as the caregiver to help them learn these things, right? Help them name and work through their emotions by modeling this behavior. So when something happens to you, you can say, oh, I feel sad. We're watching a movie on TV, right? I feel sad looking at the sad movie. How do you feel? When I feel sad, I notice in my tummy it hurts a little bit. Like those little things are going to help your child be able to connect and understand what's going on and put words to it. Remember, trauma triggers are less obvious. It's hard to know what's triggering a child, right? It might be a smell. It might be seeing a dad and a daughter together at the grocery store, right? And they may have a really big and strong reaction all of a sudden to something like this. So just being mindful that is a part of that overreactive alarm system, and learning what your child's triggers are can really help you to navigate this. Great, so we're gonna talk a little bit about tuning in. So attunement is a fancy way of saying the ability to understand your children's cues and respond in a way that helps them cope with overwhelming feelings, manage their emotions, and make good choices. So just what I've been saying, right? So being attuned to your child, this is so powerful for our kids, figuring out who they are and helping them learn coping strategies so that when they experience these triggers, they are able to identify that and manage that in a healthy and safe way, right? They need your help, right? When you're little, you don't have those words. You don't know how to label your emotions. Even when you're a teenager, you don't. Even most adults don't. So they need your help mirroring and emotional labeling are techniques used to help children make sense of their feelings. We're going to talk a lot about mirroring next week, so please make sure that you join us on our next webinar. If you're watching on YouTube, you can check that one out on mirroring. And when you're being attuned to your child, it's requiring you to be somewhat of a feelings detective, right? And so you're really having to figure out how does my child act when they feel sad or when they feel mad, and it's really kind of cool to see because they just have such differences, especially if you have a bunch of, maybe you have 3 or 4 kids, you can just see how they all act a little bit differently, which can be cool to see, but also a little exhausting because you're trying to figure out how's Johnny act when he's sad and how does Susan act when she is, right? Jordan is going to go over some techniques to help us look at ways that we can help understand our children better.
Hi, yes. So Amber introduced what attunement is, and so we're going to talk about how you can attune with your child, how you can connect with them. As Amber said, it can be really, it can be difficult at times because children express themselves in different ways. And so when we look about how to understand your child and meet them where they're at, it's important to notice their facial expression. And so what is your child exhibiting with their face? Does their facial expression change? Are they crying? Are they laughing? Are their eyebrows turned in? Are they angry, right? And so being able to recognize maybe how they feel. It's also important to recognize their tone of voice. So is your child's voice becoming louder, softer, high-pitched? And what does that mean, right? When they're screaming, is it they're angry? Are they really excited? If their voice is softer, are they shutting down? So looking at that, it's also important to look at the extent of speech. So does your child suddenly have more things to say? Are they becoming more quiet? Are their words coming out in a rush? Are they being more hesitant, right? So what could that mean about your child? If they're being more hesitant, are they nervous? Are they overwhelmed if they're talking really fast? If they're being really quiet and having trouble expressing themselves? If they're being more quiet, right? Are they shutting down? Are they feeling sad? And so definitely looking at those things to see how you can help your child and figure out how they feel. And then that last one down here, the posturing and muscular expression. So what does your child's body language look like? Are they curled up? Are they withdrawn? Are they laying on the ground? Are their fists clenched? Are they showing that they're really angry? Are they really tense? Are they really having a hard time sitting still, right? Do they need movement? Do they need to get outside, run around? And that can really help you understand what they're telling you with their body language. And then also it's important to look at their quality of speech, right? Is your child's words disorganized? Are they rambling? Are they regressing, right? So are they talking more babyish? Oh no. Sorry, guys. I keep doing that. And so looking at their quality speech, right, can again help you understand how they're feeling. Are they really overwhelmed? Are they nervous? Are they going through something and being really sad? And so maybe they're regressing. They are wanting more attention from you. Maybe they're seeking physical touch when they're acting more babyish or using baby talk. Then approach versus avoidance, right? So does your child become withdrawn or retreat when something's going on? Do they go to their room? Do they refuse to talk to you? Do they shut down when you try to engage in discussion? Do they become over clingy, right? So if you drop them off at daycare or school, they get really upset. They try to cling on to your legs. They don't want you to leave. And maybe you see some of that at the same time. The last one is affect modulation, or one of the two last ones is affect modulation. So does your child seem to have a harder time being soothed or self-soothing than usual? They could be telling you that they're having trouble regulating. Do they start to need more comfort from you or someone else? And how receptive are they to comfort, right? So when you get on their level, when you rub their back, when you give them a hug, does this help them calm down, or does it create more dysregulation in them? And then mood. Does your child's mood overtly change? So maybe you notice that they're getting triggered more easily, they're getting angry quicker, they're more irritable. And so paying attention to how frequently their mood's changing and what's causing that mood change, right? Is it something that usually doesn't make them angry and now they're really sensitive to a lot of things right now? And so that could definitely be a warning sign that something's going on. So oftentimes, right, as adults, as mothers, you want to, instead of listening, right, you want to fix your child's problem, and that's really normal. You want to help those hard feelings go away. But it's really helpful and important to understand that listening and providing support and helping them identify those emotions and sitting with them in those emotions can even be more powerful, so that they know that they're heard, that someone's listening to them and can help them work through those emotions. And as you empathize with them, sit there with them and listen to them and help them identify those emotions, then in the end, they're able to work through that problem or whatever is bothering them and kind of problem solve on their own. And so you help them, give them the tools to be able to understand how they're feeling and how they can get through that. So we're about done, but we want you to know that you've made a big step towards helping your children heal, being supportive. I know this information sometimes can be hard to hear, so you're definitely taking steps to be there for your child and help them through this time. Our contact information is here. So our phone numbers, our direct lines, and our emails. So feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. And we really appreciate you taking the time to listen to us.
Thank you so much for being here. Have a great day.